The KDI School Development Talk series will begin momentarily. Please set your Zoom username as your name and affiliation, and if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know through the chat room. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on the time zone you're all in. Welcome to the third KDI School Development Talk Series virtual event. My name is G.A. Park from the KDI School of Public Policy and Management, and I will serve as the virtual MC for today's webinar. Now, before we begin, please kindly note that today's webinar is currently being live streamed through KDI School's YouTube channel and is also being recorded for knowledge sharing purposes. Please also note that today's webinar will be uploaded through KDI School's K Developedia website. For today's event, distinguished speakers from Bangladesh and the World Bank will give insightful presentations on Bangladesh. English-Korean simultaneous interpretation is also being provided for today's event. Please set the language interpretation option according to your preference through the Zoom setting below. Also, please keep your mic muted when you're not speaking, but if you have any questions and comments during the presentations, please leave them with your name and affiliation in the chat room, and we will cover them during the Q&A session after the presentations. Now, I would like to proceed the opening of the event by inviting our distinguished speakers to deliver their opening and welcoming remarks. First, Dr. Uk Son, Associate Dean of the Office of Development Research and International Cooperation, and Professor of KDI School will deliver his opening remarks.
His Excellency Delwar Hossain, Bangladesh Ambassador of the Republic of Korea, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, participants on Zoom and YouTube, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. On behalf of the KDI School of Public Policy and Management, I'd like to welcome everyone to the third 2022 KDI School Development Talks webinar series. Thank you so much for your interest and participation to today's event. I believe most of the participants are familiar with the KDI School in Korea, but for those joining us new today, I'd like to take this opportunity to briefly introduce KDI School and the mission of our webinar series. KDI School was founded as an affiliated educational institution of Korea Development Institute, the first government-led research institute in socio-economic policy. Established in 1997, the KDI School has educated more than 5,000 alumni from 140 countries with the mission of fostering the next generation of global leaders, and total of 60 Bangladesh nationals have graduated KDI School. Along with our dedication to fostering global leaders, our mission is to share the Korea's development experience and public policy strategies to support partner countries to better identify policy alternatives and solutions to contribute to a more fruitful development path. KDI School's Development Talks series is one of our efforts to share knowledge in light of KDI School's mission. This series aims to support our goal and mission by hosting a knowledge sharing and discussion on selected Korea's 27 priority partner countries. The past webinars had informative and lively discussions focusing on 7 Korea's priority partner countries: Colombia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Egypt, Rwanda, and Philippines. We are here today to discuss Bangladesh. Bangladesh has been among the fastest growing economies in the world over the past decade, supported by a demographic dividend, strong ready-made garment exports, remittances, and stable macroeconomic conditions. It has also made a robust economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The World Bank recognizes Bangladesh's silent economic revolution through its international comparison program articles. Once an aid recipient country, now has become a donor and lending country. This amazing transition and milestone from an aid seeker to a donor country could not have been accomplished by the combined efforts of all Bangladesh people and the leaders. And it truly is a significant pride for the people of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is establishing an example in South Asia on how to ensure economic growth and revival from the ashes. Bangladesh and Korea established diplomatic relations in 1973, marking the 50th anniversary next year. Since then, Bangladesh and Korea have been sharing bilateral ties based on shared values, mutual respect, and common aspirations. Bangladesh is Korea's second largest loan recipient of Economic Development Cooperation Fund, and 2021, the two countries signed a loan agreement for 2021 to 25 and continued collaboration for peace and prosperity. In addition, two countries agreed and have been collaborating on a wide range of areas, including health, ICT, education, skills, training, water treatment, energy, and transport. Abdul Kalam Abdul Momen, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bangladesh, has stated that Korea's development assistance has surely contributed to Bangladesh socio-economic advancement and hope to remain a priority partner country even beyond Bangladesh's formal graduation to a developing country in 2026. Bangladesh and Korea will seek to elevate bilateral relationship, forging a deeper, comprehensive economic partnership based on common priorities with long-term perspectives. This webinar would not have been possible without KDI School's Global Alumni Network. I sincerely appreciate alumni's continued interest and support of the schools throughout their time and participation. So in this regard, I would like to convey special thanks to our distinguished speakers, Mr. Abdul Razak, Public Relations Officer at Bangladesh Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and Mr. Mustafa Amir Sabi, the Social Protection Specialist at the World Bank, for participating in today's webinar. I believe today's webinar provides learning opportunities for everyone through discussions on the current policy responses to COVID-19. I also look forward to live discussions and various suggestions regarding the direction of development cooperation with Bangladesh. Again, we'd like to thank His Excellency Delwar Hossain, distinguished speakers, and online participants for your precious time. Thank you very much.
That was a message from the Dr. Ukson, Associate Dean and Professor of KDI School. Thank you for the insightful message, Professor Son. Next, congratulatory remarks will be delivered by Ambassador Delwar Hossain, Bangladesh Ambassador to Korea.
Thank you. I guess I am audible to everyone. Okay. The respected Associate Dean of KDI School of Public Policy and Management, Professor Ukson, distinguished speakers, scholars, and experts, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good morning. It's my pleasure and privilege to be a part of this August gathering and share my thoughts with you. At the very outset, I would like to convey my heartiest thanks to the Office of the Development Research and International Cooperation of KDI School of Public Policy and Management for arranging this event on Bangladesh. I deeply appreciate the initiative. Such a dialogue will certainly help the audience better understand the development initiatives of Bangladesh and also to explore the potentials of future collaboration between Bangladesh and the Republic of Korea. Today, I would not like to go into technical details. I would like to leave it on to the experts. I would only seek to give you some overview of where we are and what we seek to do in the coming days. As you might be aware, Bangladesh emerged as an independent state in 1971 through a devastating war. As a result, we had to start the development journey practically from scratches. After the independence, many international experts were highly doubtful about the survival and progression of the new state. However, the assiduous people of Bangladesh have proved those experts utterly wrong. Bangladesh now proudly stands as one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Bangladesh posted an impressive GDP growth rate of 8.15%. Even amid the pandemic, Bangladesh achieved substantial GDP growth rates, which are the highest in the Asia-Pacific region. Prompt and prudent measures by the government helped Bangladesh successfully contain the pandemic and also secure an early economic recovery. The World Bank projects 6.4% GDP growth rate for Bangladesh in the financial year 2022-23. However, the government has set a higher target of 7.5% growth in the forthcoming financial year. According to international experts, the country is poised to maintain high economic growth in the coming years, to emerge as the 26th largest economy in the world by 2030. During the last 50 years, Bangladesh's economy experienced a significant transformation from an agriculture-dependent economy to industry and service sector-led economy. The private sector remains the main growth engine for Bangladesh. The domestic industries are now in the midst of continued upgradation and expansion to cater the growing domestic demands and high-end international market. Continued improvement of people's living standard through sustained economic growth remains utmost priority for the government of Bangladesh. The present government has undertaken multifarious initiatives and numerous mega projects under the Vision 2021, Vision 2041, and Delta Plan 2100, with a view to enhancing the competitiveness of the economy and transforming Bangladesh into a developed and prosperous country by 2041. Once a predominantly aid recipient country, now confidently seeks to engage in mutually beneficial cooperation with its friends. The Republic of Korea and Bangladesh enjoy excellent bilateral relations. In last 5 decades, our relationship witnessed tremendous expansion, both in depth and dimension. That's of Bangladesh. At the moment, our countries are in meaningful collaboration. On the other hand, Korea is now the 5th largest foreign investor in Bangladesh. It is heartening to mark the growing presence of Korean companies and entities in Bangladesh in the recent years. On the other hand, Bangladesh remains one of the top recipients of Korean ODA since long. The participation of Korean companies in infrastructure projects in Bangladesh has also witnessed a significant growth in the recent years. A substantial number of Bangladeshi nationals have been working for Korean companies here in Korea and in other countries across the globe. Despite such an encouraging scenario, there still remains a huge potential untapped. The current development trajectories of the two countries render tremendous prospects for the further collaboration in varied fields on a win-win proposition. South Korea can turn out to be one of the most preferred source of advanced machinery and industrial inputs for Bangladesh's rapidly growing industrial sector. Ever-expanding domestic market in Bangladesh creates an enormous opportunity for Korean consumer products and leisure articles. Certain Bangladeshi products also have the potential for greater access to Korean market. Korea can avail the huge pool of competitive workforce of Bangladesh to maintain its current standing in the global value and supply chain. A meaningful partnership in the global value chain and supply chain could be immensely beneficial for both countries. Bangladesh, with its robust economic progress and vibrant private sector, is now well poised for such partnership. Next year, 2023, marks the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. We would like to seize this opportunity to take our relationship to a new height and make it more meaningful to the people in both countries. Thank you all for your kind attention. Thanks.
Thank you for the kind message and joining us today, Ambassador Delwar Hossain. Now I am pleased to invite the first presenter of today's event, Dr. Abdur Razak. He is currently Public Relations Officer at Bangladesh Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and he will speak on scientific research policies of Bangladesh. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Abdur Razak, and it is great to have you here, and the floor is yours. Dr. Razak, are you preparing your slides? Okay.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's okay. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And the slide is okay? Working
Yes,
on?
everything's
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. Depends on your time zone. Especially thanks to KDI, the Professor Upchan, and the Honorable Bangladesh Ambassador in South Korea, Delwar Hossain sir. So greetings from Bangladesh, and it's my pleasure to share my views about the scientific research policies of Bangladesh. I'm also the KDI alumni. So first of all, Bangladesh, that's our Honorable Ambassador told very nicely. It's a flying bird in development arena. Bangladesh is moving very fast and very swiftly. So in all arena of research, Bangladesh is successfully showing his present and tremendously developed step by step. So first of all, I'm interested to share that scientific policies is very important for any particular nation because today's world is very moving around the innovation and technological development, rather the resources, mine, coal, and other things. So the scientific policies, it's an upward trend, and it's actually help to the people or the nation, even the community, to problem solving capacity and create the solution of any arised problem. And even the scientific policy lead the innovation system in the country and the invention systematic wave that actually the general people will be benefited at the end of the research output. Even the industrialization that we are watching around the world, even the Bangladesh also, it's very tremendously through the specific and updated. I'm presenting only the scientific policies. That is the window, that is the wave to give the direction of country's industrial force and country.
Are you there, Mr. Razak?
If I have a good policies that we have seen in Japan, Korea, and even the China also. Sorry, are you hearing?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Hello?
Yeah, hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh my God.
We can
Okay.
hear you well, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, maybe if your connection is unstable, maybe you can turn off your camera. Maybe that'll help. But are you there, Mr. Razak? It seems like his connection is not stable. Can we continue with the second presentation, Mr. Mustafa Sabi? Are you there?
Yeah, I am here.
Okay, can we
Want me to continue or could you wait for him?
can we start your presentation first, and then once Mr. Razak comes back, he can continue his presentation. Are you ready now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay,
do
so
that.
just
Yeah.
just let me introduce you first. So everyone, I'm sorry for the inconveniences. So I'm going to introduce our second presenter. So I'm pleased to invite the second presenter, Mr. Mustafa Sabi. He is social protection specialist at the World Bank, and he will speak about social protection policies and programs in response to COVID-19 in Bangladesh. So everyone, please welcome Mr. Mustafa Sabi, and the floor is yours.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Ms. GE, Associated Dean, Honorable Dean Oksong, and the whole career school, which is my alma mater, for providing the opportunity to connect again and deliver this presentation on a very important topic in the Bangladesh's development journey, particularly during after the COVID pandemic. So maybe without further ado, let me please share my screen and start my presentation. Yeah, can you see the full screen, Ms. Gia?
Yes, we can see your full screen.
Right. Yeah, thank you, His Excellency, distinguished speakers, and to all the participants for attending today's presentation. And for this initiative of the Cadet School of Development talks, particularly for Bangladesh. So today, as Mr. G already introduced me as a social protection specialist, I will mainly, there are many development challenges and issues and success stories of Bangladesh, but I will mainly focus on, given my areas of interest, on the social protection policies and programs. So I have designed my presentation into several contents. So before going directly into the COVID-19 policy measures of the government, let us go back to where did we stand before the COVID, right before the COVID, what are the development context of Bangladesh? So what are the social protection policy measures before the COVID hit? What are the spending trends? And what are the pre-COVID challenges? Those things are really important to know, because without knowing the trends, it's always difficult to assess how the country performed during the COVID period. So the first one, so what types of development context existed in Bangladesh just before March 2020, when the first COVID patient identified in the country and the lockdown. So as Mr. Excellency Ambassador rightly pointed out, I will not go into detail of those Bangladesh success stories, just to give you one snapshot. So Bangladesh economy was growing at a healthy pace, and macroeconomic condition was really strong in the pre-COVID period, as Bangladesh maintained like 6.5% plus GDP growth. Budget deficit was well within the threshold of 5%. The export and remittance, which have been our huge strength for the economic growth, they were buoyant. Agriculture had bumper harvests, and Bangladesh recovered quite nicely due to its resilience to face successive shocks like the price crisis or the financial crisis in 2007 and 9. Also, the ready-made garments, leather, light engineering, manufacturing sector, they promised robust growth in the coming years. The remittance earning was a little bit affected during the global slowdown and fall of oil price, but the recovery was quite quick. So this was the macroeconomic situation. So what are the human development situation, the social sector situation in Bangladesh in the pre-COVID period? So the progress of selected social outcomes was really inspiring other countries, particularly the countries in the South Asian and many low-income and even middle-income countries. So Bangladesh ranked second in South Asia in terms of poverty reduction. Also, Bangladesh had attained food sufficiency at the aggregate level. Child nutrition outcomes have improved remarkably, and infant mortality, child mortality, they were reduced at a significant rate. which contribute Bangladesh to attain many of the Millennium Development Goals till 2015. Also, the average literacy rate, it also increased. But despite that, with all those successes, there are like pre-existing vulnerabilities in the country's economy and human development sectors. As you can see, almost 1 in 6 Bangladeshis was still living in the extreme poverty in the pre-COVID period. 1 in 4 people are food insecure. The out-of-pocket health expenditure, they accounted for like around 72% of the total expenditure. The learning outcomes were not that much impressive, and also the labor force particularly. Most of the labor force are in the informal sector, like the 85% in 2016. And they mainly, this labor force remained undereducated or semi-skilled or unskilled labor workforce. They had very little educational level of this labor force. Another thing that was due to the rapid urbanization, the country was facing many urban dimensions, particularly the urban poverty was rising. And you know, you are well aware that Bangladesh is one of the vulnerable countries to climatic shocks, which threatened to affect more than 70 million people in Bangladesh in the pre-COVID period. And then the COVID hit in March 2020. And it exacerbated many of the trends disrupting job creation, and Bangladesh it's back into the poverty situation. Real GDP growth slowed down to 2.4%, and many of the migrant workers returned to home, and urban and rural poor people, they reported income losses like 75% to 62% respectively. And also based on trends of surveys from World Bank, we ran a macro simulation and found that household consumption could decline by 13%, which would push as many as 21 million people at below poverty line. So there, we always concerned about those people's which are just slightly above the poverty line. They are always susceptible to different types of shocks and vulnerabilities. So that also happened during the COVID period. Around 21 million people was suspected to fall below the poverty line. So therefore, despite progress, social protection continues to be very highly relevant to the development journeys of Bangladesh, which was more prominent during the COVID period. So what are the pre-COVID social protection policy and overall spending? So, you know, the Bangladesh government kept innovating and deploying different core elements of development policies as social protection evolution. So if you can see that immediately after the war and cyclones and floods during the 1970s and 80s, most of the policies in those decades, you would see that they are mainly relief activities of the public works or food aid types of activities, which are very similar to many other countries which face the war, droughts, cyclones, or floods. So until 70s to 80s, those are mainly that. In 1990s, the conditional cash transfers in the form of like female education stipend, they started to emerge into the social protection realm, and they contributed to the educational objectives in Bangladesh. And in 2000s and 2010s, you would see that the government's the policy focus had been mainly on graduation goals or the employment generation goes through its social protection policies, building resilience, demographic targeting. So those more and more public work programs and employment generation programs was there. And another excellent initiative that the government through its National Social Security Strategy, which was formulated and adopted in fiscal year 2015-16. So it tried to structure all the programs, like there are like more than 100 programs each year in for social safety net, but it tried to categorize them into different life cycles and coverage and types of programs, and also some technological initiatives like social registry, advanced MIS, and G2P payments. So it had some really good initiatives into that particular plan. So if you see the spending trends in the pre-COVID period, you'll see that its social protection spending share had been hovering around 2 to 3% in GDP over the last decade or so, and it around nearly 1/10 of the total public expenditure. But the spending is still in line with many middle-income countries. Like it's even higher than Singapore, Zambia, and Ghana. Although a little bit lower than its South Asian counterparts like India and Sri Lanka, but it's well within very good zone as regards the spending. But again, what are the pre-COVID challenges in the social protection system? So we'll see that not only the spending, the government also increased the coverage. So from household income and expenditure survey, we found that the coverage increased from like 12% to 28% households in 2016, but the coverage was highly skewed towards the social assistance programs. And particularly the programs like the non-contributory types of programs. And the coverage remained very small or volatile. Although the policies focused in 2010 in labor market and employment generation programs, but the coverage remained very small and volatile, especially for labor market programs. As I said already, this is also evident in this particular slide. It represents only 8 to 13% of the total social protection expenditures, the ladder programs, we call the graduation programs or the ladder programs of the labor market programs. And many of the programs like vocational or technical skills programs were really important programs, but they mostly focus on urban areas. So they are lower focused in the rural areas. And also Bangladesh is one of the champions in many of the economic inclusion programs, like the graduation programs, but they tend to be very small and short-lived, and they're mainly dependent on the financing of the development partners. So that was one challenge in that. So as I already told, the rapid urbanization and it is not, the social protection expenditure is not going along in line with the urban rapid urbanization, which may make the country ill prepared to face increased urbanization. As you can see, only about 6% expenditure were exclusive for the urban areas. As a result, the coverage was lower than poverty rate in urban areas. As you can see, that 10%, 9% cover versus like 18.9% poor in the urban areas. So there have been also like inclusion and exclusion errors persist in targeting. You can see the numbers. And there have been one very good plan, the planning of social registry, which is called the National Household Registry, but it was yet to be operational in the pre-COVID period, which I'll talk a little bit later, which makes it a little bit difficult for the COVID, implementing the COVID affected in response to COVID policy measures. So also the awareness among the beneficiaries regarding the eligibility criteria was quite low, although they are quite aware of the benefits. But the awareness among the programs was quite low, which often impaired them from participate in different kinds of programs. And this is the amounts of benefits have been not that much consistent with the demands. It actually accounts less than 3% of the total household income of poor and extreme poor, the total main 7 main programs it amounts. And if that transfer is accounted for, the poverty rate would decrease only by around 2.1% or 2.3% pre-transfer or post-transfer. So that the benefit is all the related to the size of the benefit. So now, what types of policy priorities and programs are in response to COVID-19 the government of Bangladesh adopted? So immediately after the COVID hit in March 2020, our Honorable Prime Minister announced quite a I would say quite a good economic response packages, around 23 stimulus packages, which accounted to more than 1% of GDP during that time, and like estimated value was $14.6 billion as of March 20. And until like April 2020, that package increased to 28 packages, and it amount accounted to 22 billion. The objectives was mainly to include retention of workers in the export-oriented manufacturing sector, restoration of demand and supply, sustaining private sector firms, medical insurance, and providing food and basic income to the those who have lost jobs, day laborers, and to low-working professionals and small businesses. So, but more than 3/4 of those stimulus packages are mainly monetary policy measures. They come from extension of different credit measures. And the fiscal cost still it was like quite significant 1%, but like it was around accounted like 18% of the total policy measures, the fiscal cost or the government budget cost. So the protection of to protect the workers and poor and vulnerable, government also expanded social protection coverage both horizontally and vertically. So the horizontal expansion, it could say that the old age, widow, and for the disability allowance, it increased to 112 more forest districts, which expanded to like more 262 odd districts in April 2022. The unconditional cash transfers were provided for the informal workers who lost their jobs, like around 5 million households targeted, and also the cash assistance for laid-off workers in export-oriented industries to support them, those workers for up to 3 months immediately after the COVID hit. And also there are food support, food subsidies, food-friendly programs for those affected population, both in urban and rural areas. And as per budget speech this fiscal year, COVID target response packages, it was like, it was implemented around 71.6%, so quite a good amount of implementation in that respect. And also World Bank, they provided, as per the request from the government of Bangladesh, the World Bank group responded very quickly. And fortunately, we had some budget support programs ongoing and credit series programs during that time. And we could support the government's efforts in through budgetary support and program support and complementing them. In the next 2 slides, I will not discuss them. You will get the slides. These are all the stimulus packages that were adopted that I described in brief in the earlier 2 slides. You would see the fiscal policy measures, although higher in numbers, but its accounts to lower in the budget allocation. But these are the monetary policy measures, mostly the credit supports and for the employment generation, protection of workers, those things. So what are the challenges that the government faced to implement these policy measures? So as I described earlier, that there are many pre-existing vulnerabilities in the social protection system, which made it further exacerbated the challenges for the government to implement very quickly and respond to that particular shocks. As you can say that benefit tended to be allocated based on primarily on population size without have the chance to it's aligning with the specific area of concern. And likewise, pre-COVID time, most programs during COVID-19 had a rural focus, and they were not prepared for the shock which impact urban households. Particularly, there had not been that much social protection coverage for the urban areas. And other concerns, Bangladesh not only faced COVID-19 during that time, there were like cyclones and several rounds of floods during that time, which made the sufferings caused by the pandemic further accentuated. And the targeting of potential beneficiaries had mostly been conducted based on the income level, but the types of shocks or challenges, they are changing very fastly, and that created a chance to exclude many of the unemployed people or that new poor groups that I have identified earlier, that may be 21 million groups. They're not prepared to cover very quickly those new poor groups. And I have said about the social registry, due to the absence of an up-to-date database, that proved to be very government's Achilles heels during the pandemic to quickly respond to many of those areas. And lack of adequate knowledge among eligibility criteria, I have said that, and potential coverage. But the government, we need to appreciate the fact the government also adopted several innovative tech-based approach to promote the access to information, like promoting the hotline numbers, to seeking for relief packages, suggestions, and providing any grievance redress. But existing weaknesses including the digital literacy, inadequate access to internet, or the network limitation in many of the remote areas, that particularly affected that very good initiatives from the government. Also, during the pandemic, we need to acknowledge that service providers had to select beneficiaries within very difficult circumstances, restricted timeline, and also subject to allocation and budget restrictions. So, and many government officials and local governments representatives had to put admirable efforts to raise the efficacy of the services delivered, whatever the resources, whatever the technological things they had in their hands. So they had to jump within those resources. And I would say that they had mainly succeeded in many of the areas to responding through that their own innovation and the government's very good intention. So based on those, I'll not take too much time, maybe directly go through some of the recommendations. There are many recommendations, but I tried to focus on mainly 6, where based on my learning about the Korea and its development path and Bangladesh's current development social protection areas, the 6 areas that I have identified that we can work together, the Bangladesh government, the Korean government, and even the development partners like World Bank can work together to address those challenges and make the social protection more ready to those shocks. So first 3 way forward that I would suggest are mainly related to direct investment in programs. So every year during the budget, so there have been some direct support from development partners. So I've suggested that if the Korean government think that they would invest in the social protection programs and systems in Bangladesh, they can collaborate increasing the scale and scope of those labor market interventions that I've earlier said. Many of those are pilots, they should be scaled up, and Bangladesh has expertise in those areas, already expertise, but in more investment and sustainable investments are needed, particularly on those areas. And Korea's long-term success in the vocational and technical education areas and those trainings, I think Korean can directly invest particularly on those labor market skill-based training and other areas, and also should link those trainees with the markets and provided them access to the finance and also provide self-employment opportunities to those areas. So my number 2 way forward that came to my mind, it's that financing for shock responsive programs in an efficient and cost-effective manner. So have been widely acknowledged the fact in the globally the development partners and also in the governments that the time has come to build adaptive or shock responsive social protection programs to not only tackle shocks like COVID, but also other natural, economic, and political shocks. So, but in cases of investing, the financing strategy should be commensurate with the risk patterns. So there should be the mix of budgets, insurance, contingency financing. There can be different models, but they should finance on those programs. But programs should be very flexible, so that the guidelines should be flexible. In that way, they can adopt to scale very quickly and respond to those shocks very well. And the program should be adapted to the urban context, as I've already said, the urban dimension. The third one is tailoring expanding the programs to vulnerable urban areas. I have already discussed that because the urban area, that vulnerable population, they have some different types of vulnerabilities, and the program should, the investment should focus on those urban households which may face different types of vulnerabilities. The next 3 way forwards is mainly investment in system strengthening. I have already discussed about the social registry, which was not that much operational during the pre-COVID period, which made the COVID implementation, early identification, and delivery of many of the cash transfers and other assistance very difficult for the service providers. So because they can reduce cost by merging data collection process for multiple times, multiple programs, and multiple service deliveries. But we should be very careful for 2 key features for social registries. That it's very easy to use because our government level service providers have different levels of capacity. They have like operating data sharing protocol, and also they should be updated regularly. One of the problems that we face for the social registry is that the data collection was done pre-COVID period. So we didn't know what happened to those actual population, the new poor groups or the other groups which fall below poverty or out of the poverty during the COVID time. So it should be updated regularly. There should be one mechanism. And the Korean government, given its very good national government registration system, it can share some knowledge and expertise in those areas, in particular with the government. In another, the number 5 way forward could be we have like dual budgeting system, and it makes sometimes the financial reporting very difficult. So we have some very good initiatives like strengthening the budget and accounting system, plus and rationalization. But due to the dual budgeting system, different development and operating budget, sometimes it's very difficult for the line ministries to report on this expenditures, and we don't get adequate from the expenses. We get the allocation part, but not the expenses part. The government can partner with other foreign government can partner with other development partners in the government who focus on particularly strengthening that area of accounting, the budget accounting system. The final recommendation would be to promote citizen engagement, which is really important for transparency and accountability. As you already have seen, the eligibility criteria awareness is very low often among the citizens, and they often don't have the very solid platform to redress those grievances, right? So the government can partner with other areas where the countries who have already succeeded in those areas and improving the access to information and developing a robust grievance management system. These novel initiatives were all discussed and all included in the National Social Security Strategy, but it's time that we strengthen our efforts to make them more implementable in the coming days. And also the government can promote some of the citizen engagement, such as social audits, which can contribute to the transparency and greater accountability. With that, I would like to thank all of you to patiently listening to the presentation, and I'd be very welcoming all of your questions in the coming rounds. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for the informative presentation, Mr. Sabi. And now we will continue with the first presentation. So is Mr. Razak here?
Yeah. Are you
Yes.
hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you very well and your
okay.
slide. And can you share your slide? And in case your internet is not stable, it will be okay if you turn on the camera.
I think my internet is okay.
Ah,
Sometimes,
okay, great.
hopefully, yeah.
Okay, great.
It's the uncertainty, unexpected. Anyway,
Yeah, so you have around,
good morning. Yeah,
yeah,
please.
you have around like 15 minutes, so you can continue your slide.
Okay. Okay. So there is a time constraint. Okay, no problem. Thank you very much. Greetings to all again. I'm extremely sorry because first trying to disconnect with you people. So the scientific research policy that I have told earlier, it's actually help the nations to solve the problem, bring the solutions, and right track to innovation, investigation, and industrialization to the nations, and even the practical learnings of every nations and the peoples, they can learn, because the policy is actually the guideline, the framework that the nation's industrializations and the scientific activities move on. And it is a boundless. And later, if you have a very good and intelligence scientific policy, you should get the target. That's like that. The target point will be okay. Otherwise, you will be behind the back screen. But first, I want to give you the overview of the global research scenario, especially the scientific policy, and where the Bangladesh stand, and even as well as the Asia, right? The first, you see the American scientific research policy and the European scientific research policies, because these two are very first and in the prompt position in the globe. So the American scientific research policy is based on the paper and article focused on. They first tried to invent the important article or paper they produce. Later on, they go to the industrialization. But the European scientific research policy is totally different. It's the industrial focused one. They try to focus on industry first, then the paper and article, other things. And the same time, if you see the fundamental scientific policy in Asia, very interesting, that one. The picture actually give you the overview. That is the two sides. It's like a clone, like a hybrid. So first, I'm trying to introduce that JKSC. It's actually the Asian research policy leading by Japan, Korea, Singapore, and China. Hong Kong is also there, but I'm not counting it. I'm counting only these four nations: Japan, Korea, Singapore, and China. They are leading the Asian scientific research. They are the pathfinder. They are the focus point of all over the Asia's scientific research. What is they are focused on? They are focused on hybrid. They followed the American paper and article-based research policy, as well as the European-based, the practical industrialization focus policy. So this hybrid research policy actually helped the Asian regime to go forward and complete their scientific target. That's why the Asian scientific policies, one strength point I'm interested to share with you. If you see the Asia versus Europe, the scientific researchers, if you see the graph, the right side is the right side from my end, but your end may be the left side. So it's very clearly written. It's a Nature global journal, you know, their study, the density of researchers per 1,000 population, and vice versa, the number of researchers in millions. So it's Asia and Europe. If you see Asia and USA, see the Hong Kong case, Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and mainland China versus the United Nations. Here, if you see the Singapore and Hong Kong, according to the science workforce, and even the Malaysia, they are doing very well, but South Korea is tremendously in top position because outstanding their position, according to the researchers' density. So that is the showcase we can receive the fundamental issues of what the global scientific researchers and the Asian scientific researchers, rather Bangladesh, I am saying about the other countries, they're standing and where is our position. It was my intention to give the overview about Europe, America, and other countries. And then I'm interested to overview and share the Bangladeshi perspective. This is the Bangladesh flag and Bangladesh map. You can find out in the Google or anywhere, any documentation, you can find Dhaka is the capital of that country. So I'm interested to share the constitutional aspects because the scientific policies of Bangladesh is based on the fundamental principles of our constitutions. In our constitutions, the Article 16 and Article 18A, these two articles emphasize the scientific policies from the birth day of Bangladesh. 16A, they emphasize the revolutionary action of agriculture, education, rural electrification, industries, and public health. You know, Bangladesh is today standing a very good position based on the agricultural development because we are self-sufficient on our food production and other things. So it depends on our tremendous and extraordinary agricultural scientific research policies. You know, Bangladesh Agricultural University located in Mymensingh, they are leading that sector. And the education, rural electrification, industries, and public health, it's also moving and coming to the mark. And Article 18A, they identified very clearly some improvement and protective innovation ideas regarding the environment, natural resource, and future citizen. That is mandate to our constitution. They emphasize we should be adopt such a innovation and invention and scientific policies. They should targeted these specific areas. So our constitution is the fundamental, and they lead to us to drive a scientific way. And 2011, Bangladesh government introduced the special national science and technology policy, and they highlighted some specific nodal points. First of all, the ministries, government and semi-government agencies, universities, and private enterprises. And these four sectors combinedly are working very spatial way. You know very well the present government, they emphasize the educational research institutions a very extraordinary way. And that's why they're creating science and technology universities, even the remote areas of Bangladesh. Almost 14 to 20 new science and technology universities the government has already established to attract the people, motivate the young scientists to come forward and invent new things to compete the Bangladeshi demand compared to world scientific inventions. And the science and technology policy, they also identified some policy actions. The applications should be guided and well developed by the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Science and Technology Innovation sections. And they also count down the socio-economic development also, not only the scientific policies, they integrated the socio-economic development perspective also. And the policy formulation, they said and created some sectoral and subsectoral actions. It's a lot of and very long details, so I'm not going there. There is a time constraint. So the policy formulation, they have highlighted some special issues like transparency, participatory and the sustainable development aspects, local and global needs, even the technology dynamics. That is the special one. The technology dynamics, it should be very clear formative written way the Bangladesh government introduced in 2011 under the science and technology policy. And the policy navigation, I have just checked few issues, some legal and policy framework, science and technology and innovation. It's clear to us, intellectual property rights. It's also highlighted and emphasized the science and technology policy, promotion and announcements among the stakeholders. Here, the stakeholders, all the scientists, researchers, even the beneficiaries, I am saying the mass people. And the fund mobilization, how the fund will be mobilizing, the science policy indicated is very clearly, maybe the public-private partnership, even the joint venture with the foreign investors like the Korea, Japan, even the Middle East, the richest countries, they can join, invest in Bangladesh to promote the science and technology policies and to establish a very big scientific research centers and hubs. And even the infrastructures, the research centers already, the next slide, I will show you, there are a lot of research centers already adopted and created by the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Industry Ministry. And this is very unique in Science and Technology Policy 2011. It emphasized the Bangladesh government should have started new scientific diplomacy, not only the political diplomacy. It should be the scientific diplomacy, vice versa, with the economic and political diplomacy. And the Agenda 2030, it's no one will be left behind. That means everybody should be aligned with the development sector. The Bangladesh government is committed. And two leading ministries that I have already said, a lot of institutions they have created. Ministry of Science and Technology here important, Bangladesh Atomic Energy, Bangladesh Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, even the latest one, the Atomic Energy Company Limited, it's supported by the Russia. And in the industries, there's a lot of, if you go, you can see, we are promoting, we are analyzing, we are setting the lot of institutions to innovate the new items to produce and export to the foreign countries. And Ministry of Agriculture, that is the ancient promoter of science policies in Bangladesh that I have told. And today's, the focal point is Ministry of Science and Technology and Ministry of Industries. If you see the advances of scientific research in Bangladesh, it is very clear. If you see this is the Scoopus findings in 2019 data I have received. They have only 6,000 documents they analyzed. And here they found that the Bangladesh is now moving very quickly, especially the chemistry, social science, computing, engineering, the medicine, all aspects of scientific research area that can be Bangladesh focused very quickly, and they can adapt and taking the support from the developed countries, and they establish new industrial based and research centers. And the topic should be that it is actually counted in 2019 Scoopus findings. 2022 the result is very impressive, and that is very the progressive. But the problem of scientific research in Bangladesh, I find out in 7 aspects. The first one is the lack of resources. We need to create the general population in the more technical oriented, and financial crisis is also, but we are overcoming it. Nowadays, we are trying to solve the financial, and our political stability, financial stability is coming very quick. The first presenter shown, the World Bank Group, our financial strength is in a stable position. And then institutional incapability, we need to focus on more. We have some guidelines. Western countries, we can taking a beer, some lack of interest, personal interest. We should grow the young scientists to focus on their mind, to be a research bent of mind, and some willingness to hard work. In nature, some people, they are not ready to willingnessly to work hard. It's another barriers, I think. And lastly, the lack of government support. I am saying when the scientists and the institution are creating very good things, the government support should be very prompt, some honorarium and other things, some beneficial package should be declared. And first recommendations, we have seen the first slides, and second, the USA, the paper and article based, the scientific policies, and EU, the industrial based, and Asia, this is hybrid based. But which one is better for Bangladesh? Obviously, the matching with the Asia hybrid focus, the research, but I think needful research is more important for Bangladesh scientific policies. The policy think tankers and the policy people, they should be considered their mind while they are setting a new and important scientific policy for Bangladesh. They should consider the needful, which one is very emergency for me and which one is very needful to Bangladesh. And that should be the policy is two important things. Which resources are available in my country, the nation is sufficient resources that are available, and institution development is back up to my country, and the research policy should be based on that. And that research policy should be emphasize the economic growth, the human capital, the products and technologies, even the evidence-based policy practice. If that is very important, and the think tankers and the policymakers adopt these two things, considered very well the available resources and institutional development, and finally focus on these four things, then the country should be, poverty should be in zero level, reduction will be very good. The standard, even the improve the quality of life, the real benefit of scientific research, it will come in our forefront. And some recommendations I'm getting to see, exchanging knowledge with the developed nations. It is very vital to the local scientists and policymakers. They should be exchange their knowledge with the developed nations. And new ideas, everybody have a new idea. So the new idea should be accumulate and even the combined in a common shed, and then the nation should be benefited. And we should be work with data, because this is the time for IoT and information of things, data mining, and so many things. We need to work on database. Otherwise, we have no alternatives. And science publications, we should be emphasized. Without this four combination, I'm saying the news, we cannot be moved forward to our scientific research for our perspectives. And final recommendations from my end, it should be the financial support in research from 10 to 20% from GDP. It should be allocated in our fiscal budget. And the science-based all format here in Bangladesh, the general education and the madrasa education, day by day, the science education trend is going down. We should emphasize the young generation. We should attack. We should motivate them. Please come forward to scientific research and conduct your research very well, help the nation directly. And that's why I'm saying the educational perspective. In social, some social safety net to scientists and the researchers will be created. And the political phase, no political affiliation of academician. It should be prohibited. Otherwise, the scientific stance of Bangladesh will not be so benefited and vital among the other SAARC nations, and even the Asian scientific giants like Korea, Japan, and China also. And the communal parents, some dynamic linkers will be created among the scientists. Overall, some long-term motivational package should be declared for the scientists and the academicians. They can be motivated enough to contribute and engage themselves for the development in Bangladesh. Finally, what is your choice? Here is a two picture. One is the lion and another is the tiger. If I offer you which one is good for you, maybe some people will take the lion, other people opine with tiger. Here, my position, the lion is the old policies and new policies, and the tiger is the old policies. So are you ready to adopt the new policies for your scientific development, or you think that the old policies very good and dynamic, so we should be stand on the old policies? But if you offer me, I should take the liger. I'm not taking only lion, even I'm not taking only tiger. I should take the liger. It means the combined way, some good things of old policies and some very crucial and benefited important things of new policies. If we adopt this liger style, then maybe it's fostering our scientific research, institutional development, that what we are think the moving forward compete with the today's globe, it will be very good and nice. Thank you very much for your question sharing. Waiting for the questionnaire session. Thank you, Professor G.A. Fork.
Thank you for the informative presentation, Dr. Razak. And I would like to thank the two speakers again for their insightful presentation. And I think they were very beneficial for all of us joining today through spreading knowledge and stimulating new ideas. So now I would like to open the floor for discussion, and I'll share some of the questions collected prior to the webinar, and we'll cover them first. And for those who have questions, please use raise hand icon. So the first question goes to Mr. Abdur Razak. So the question was, what is the impact of the Padma Bridge on the international relations and foreign direct investment in Bangladesh?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very vital and good questions, because I have told in my presentation, the PPP, public-private partnership, or the joint investment is very good sense for accelerate the Bangladeshi scientific research oriented. In Bangladesh, Japan, for a long time, the first donor agency to invest in Bangladesh part. South Korea is the second. We have here the delegation speaks from Professor Ukshon. Korea is in the second position. So the other nations, they are also trying to invest in my country. So the foreign direct investment, we have the options in our commercial ministry, and even under the Prime Minister office, the foreign investment department, they are trying to attack them. All the ministries working very hard to offer the Bangladeshi perspective, because this country last 10 to 15 years very much stable and progressive in different ways. So if anyone interested to use the direct investment in my country, especially on the scientific research, our export processing zones, they have the slots and plots, all the facilities available there, even our economic zones. Even if the investor country just seeks their desire, okay, we are investing this amount of money for that reason, Bangladesh government is ready to welcome them, and we are ready to help you in any way. If you have any particular options, then you can raise your voice. I can specify your special answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the response, Dr. Razak. And we have second question, and the question goes to Mr. Mustafa Sabi. So recently, Bangladesh took initiative for a universal pension system. So is the social safety net program long-lasting if the public finance policy, especially income tax collection increase, is not updated?
Yeah, thank you. That's also another excellent question, particularly the universal pension scheme, which have been a long desire of the government of Bangladesh and desire of the whole country, particularly for the senior citizens. I myself wrote a book particularly on the universal social protection universal pension scheme, where both the contributory and non-contributory pension schemes were part, and we tried some simulation and models. And during the initial phases of the drafting of the particular pension strategy, we also had that mind of the tax collection of domestic resource mobilization challenge, because it's still, which also affected during the COVID-19 period. And the domestic resource mobilization is accounted to hardly 9 to 10% of the total GDP. And until and unless it increased, it will not give that much fiscal space for the government to particularly implement the non-contributory part, the old age pension for the 65 years that the government has already been providing non-contributory. There is no contribution needed, but for the contributory part and the part which will require to cover the informal sector, because the informal sector currently they are not within the coverage, which is like 85% of the population. But initial phases of the global different models, like the model for even for the neighboring country India, it suggests that at the beginning phase to attract those informal sectors into that contributory scheme package to make it a more comprehensive universal one. The government may need to provide some kinds of subsidy or the stimulus or the incentive package in the earlier phase, so that they're included. They feel that that guarantee, that the government guarantee is there, so we can reliably invest in those areas. But apart from that, it's a very valid question that without expanding our tax net and also the domestic resource mobilization, it will be quite challenging that very great initiative that the current government has taken. It has been quite there in the last couple of fiscal years, but in this fiscal year, the government has really trying to move this agenda ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. And the third question, I think it goes to Mr. Sabi again. So what are some significant changes in policies for indigenous people in Bangladesh? And what are the major issues regarding social protection for indigenous people that policymakers are focusing and planning on?
I'm not sure that I'll be able to best answer that question because the government has broader focus into different groups of, as you know, the government has taken the whole of society approach, leaving no one behind. So they are like for special communities, the Howard groups, the coastal groups, special community groups, also the indigenous ethnic groups, and also for very disadvantaged sections of the population. Currently, the government has long been taking some of the policies through social protection measures, mainly through some of the block allocations to those we call as Adivashis. So there have been some allocations for the Adivashis, the indigenous groups, and the government is very concerned about protecting their rights through the transfer measures and also different other measures. But one thing is that is missing is that the graduation programs for them, or the taking part into those employment generation and labor market programs to them. I think the government will be in a better place if they can focus directly on those types of programs, the skills development programs for those indigenous groups. The cash transfers and unconditional transfers are quite good, allocations are quite good, but the focus should be now, since we are also in the lower middle income status, we should focus those non-BN groups to those graduation programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sabi. And the last question that goes to Dr. Razak. So,
Yes,
and
please.
yeah, so in regard to the scientific research, the university is in Bangladesh could not do a lot more. So how are the universities of Bangladesh be the center of excellence and making lasting contribution in scientific research?
Yeah, thank you very much, especially the question raiser. It's a very crucial part of Bangladesh scientific development. We have a lot of universities, and even the Dhaka University, this is the oldest one, even the most prestigious one. But the university professors, maximum 90%, they did their PhDs from Europe, Canada, and America. But why they are not working for the research prospect? This is very good questions. The answer is very straight. The university, they have the knowledge, they have the experience, but they have not the spatial instrument. I am saying the spatial, practical, task-oriented machines. So if the government allocate a lot of budgets for hiring spatial machines and instruments for the universities, and some incentive for the university teachers, especially for the researchers who are inventing the new things to cope up the demand of the society, I think the university teachers will focus and the university will come forward, because we have a lot of research organizations in Bangladesh. For example, Bangladesh Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, the Rice Research Institute, so many research institutes. They have a lot of machineries and updated and well established, but the university teachers, they have the knowledge. So Bangladesh government should adopt such a policy to come forward, the university teachers and the research organizations, the knowledge from the university teachers and the machines from the research institutes, collaboratively their works, and they should come forward. That's why at the end of the time, the Bangladesh will be benefited. I think you will get your answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your last comment, Dr. Razak.
Yeah.
So timekeeping purposes, I'd like to wrap up our Q&A session here.
Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of the third Development Talks webinar on Bangladesh. Thank you again for all of your enthusiastic participation, and I hope all of you had a fruitful experience from this webinar. Before you leave, please kindly note that participation survey will be emailed to you soon, and we would appreciate it if you could take a short time to complete the survey for us to provide improved webinars in the future. And I hope to see you again at our next event in July. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Dr.
much.
Razak.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.